creating this very important, unique and remarkable conference. I was shocked and outraged to read in today's Jerusalem Post. I wonder how many of you have seen today's Jerusalem Post with the heading, "Outraged Jerusalem says Livni arrest warrant threatens ties with the UK." Miliband calls Kadima leader to express shock as diplomatic crisis escalates. Opposition leader Tzipi Livni gestures during a conference at Ben Gurion University. I have known Tzipi for so many years. I love her much. I respect her much. And it has nothing to do with politics. You know, we have friends. They say in the British Parliament, the enemy is behind you. And I don't know whether you have the same feeling here, Mr. Speaker.
Care that everyone would be in front of him.
Did you hear that? He's taking care that everyone would be in front of him. Yes, very, very, very wise man. But you know, this is so sad that this awful event took place. And I was shocked and outraged about it. She's long been a fighter for our Jewish people, and to accuse Tzipi of committing war crimes is itself, in my view, criminal. Totally, absolutely, and as a war crimes investigator, as a youngster, I regard this as strictly criminal. The Jewish Leadership Council in the United Kingdom, of which I'm a member, is together with other communal organisations leading urgent and intensive representations to our British government on this issue, and I know how very seriously our government takes this issue, and I have the very greatest respect for our British ambassador who is here with us today. And sir, please would you carry back to the United Kingdom the feeling of everyone here that this is a horror which we shall all fight against, and how we respect you so very much. And ladies and gentlemen, during the Second World War, my father, who some of you probably knew, was on Hitler's death list, so for our safety, my sister and I were shipped off to Canada. And I was incredibly happy in Montreal. I know there are a lot of you here who come from Canada. I enjoyed it enormously and was very happy in the Jewish summer camp. And I was then sent to a boarding school where I had my first encounter with vile anti-Semitism, and where, you know, whatever you said was wrong. Lend me a dime, haven't got a dime. Lend me a dime, here's a dime. You Jews have all got money. It was awful, and I was delighted to return to Britain 3 years later, went to school, and then was conscripted into the British Army and shipped off, this time to Germany, and I became the youngest war crimes investigator in the British Army of the Rhine. And I have, in fact, told many of you of the day that changed my life, the day that I went to the second anniversary of the liberation of the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, the Jewish concentration camp, the place where the only Jewish survivors in the British zone of Germany were being kept together. And we stood by the mass graves. We stood and we wept. And then I went to the orphanage, to the Kinderheim, and spent the evening with the children and could scarcely speak to them because they all spoke Yiddish, but we did manage words like ping pong, which we could both understand. But I was so moved by them, I came back almost every weekend for the next 18 months. I learned to speak Yiddish. And since then, my life has been centered on battling against racism and discrimination of all kinds, whoever it's against, whether it's against Jewish people, whether it's against Muslim people. We have to work together, ladies and gentlemen, in order to have a decent world for us and our children and our grandchildren to grow up in, because if not, it's going to go back the way it was, and that is what is on the trail at the moment. So please, can we work together, all of us, in this? And we do know that anti-Semitism is getting worse in many parts of our world. As I've told you, many of you already know, my entire family who remained in Lithuania and Latvia were murdered, every single one of them. Many are in the mass graves. Many of these mass graves are now being torn up. I went there last year and I found that the graves which we had, an organization which I was involved with, had managed to get them set up and marked, were being torn up. And the anti-Semitism which my relatives had to deal with is returning. Well, in Britain, ladies and gentlemen, it's no worse than in most other lands. And I was not surprised to read that my respected friend Abe Foxman, who is here, had described this year as probably the worst for global anti-Semitism in his tenure in the Anti-Defamation League. We must all recognize, ladies and gentlemen, the dangerous growth of anti-Semitism in so many parts of our world. However, anti-Semitism itself has changed. We are now faced with two distinct types, whether this comes from the far right, as I know too well from Britain, and most of you will know from your countries, or it comes from the far left. The far left, which focuses its attention on vilifying the Jewish state. And either way, they are attacking the Jews, the Jewish people, and finding excuses to go back to the past. In the recent European parliamentary elections, ladies and gentlemen, two members of the far-right British National Party were elected, and so were many of their partners from other European countries. In Britain, we expect many of these BNP candidates to be standing in our forthcoming general elections. Colleagues and I have recently travelled to many European and other countries. Please do not underestimate in any way the growth of the far right and the growing danger to the rights of ethnic minorities. Please remember that the current financial miseries of so many people in so many countries are causing so much concern to people like us who respect democracy and decency. Ladies and gentlemen, we must all work together to battle against the growth of the political extremes. In Britain, the Jewish community works very closely with our national and local governments, with our police forces and security services in fighting against racism. And our government has set up the cross-departmental task force on anti-Semitism, which seeks to ensure the implementation of the findings of the all-party inquiry against anti-Semitism, which my distinguished friend John Mann has already referred to. And this task force brings together 9 government departments, law enforcement agencies, 3 Jewish non-governmental organizations. And I believe that this inquiry and its finding and its implications have set a benchmark for fighting anti-Semitism against around the world, wherever it may come. And I thank the chairman of the parliamentary group in Britain, the great John Mann. Please understand that John Mann is a wonderful person, and we should all please stand up, John Mann. Stand up, and I'll do what you told. That's right. We're so lucky to have people like that, to have allies and colleagues. And together with them, we have power. Separately, we have none. So I am delighted that we've gathered together here today at this great conference in this great country that I love and have loved for so very long, and to see what steps we can take together to battle against the dangers of the future. Together, ladies and gentlemen, we have power. Separately, ladies and gentlemen, we have none. Shalom.